What's up, people? What's up? Um, my name is Ezekiel Yahweh, and I'd like to talk to you, especially my Israelites, who are the African Americans of and the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade all over the Western Hemisphere. We're the true Israelites of the Bible, and as well as the West Africans and Bantu Africans that are related to the West Africans. They're all one people. The race known as Negroes are the true Jews of God, and Jews are Negroes. The true Jews are Negroes. Um, so let me go over this. This is a book, and it's called The Hebrew Heritage of Black Africa, and I strongly recommend it. And it's written by Stephen Jacobs, and is fully documented and very reasonably priced. It's a must have for anybody who wants to know the history of the true history of the Israelites of the Bible, but of African Americans, and it's enlightening. No one book has everything in it, but this is a great book, especially for people just starting, because he takes information and combines it into one book. But anyway, let me get into it. This is chapter one of the book, and starting on page 9. Um, the importance of this book is what it says. Are African Americans the descendants of ancient Hebrews of the Middle East? The question is answered in the affirmative with resounding yes by Professor Joseph J. Williams after more than 11 years of intensive research into the subject. In his book entitled Hebrewisms of West Africa, this eminent scholar documents the origins and the extent of the in the extent of the Hebrew culture and religion in that part of West Africa along the Atlantic bulge of the continent, which is the ancestral home of most African Americans. He goes farther than simply documenting the influences of the Hebrews in West Africa. He concludes that the ancient Hebrews are parent stock from which the present day Black American peoples actually evolved. That is impressive. So he says, he goes farther than simply documenting the influence of the Hebrews in West Africa. He concludes that the ancient Hebrews are the parent stock from which present day Black American peoples actually evolved. So African Americans, Black American peoples evolved from the ancient Hebrews. So know this: when our people are saying this, you've seen people, you may have seen people on street corners, or whatever. We're all different. There are differences between us, but they're telling the truth. They are the children of God. So let me continue. For those who are unacquainted with the late Professor Williams, he was brilliant, by the way. His scholarly credentials are beyond dispute. Beside devoting over 11 years of active research into this subject, he held a doctoral degree in cultural anthropology. He was a fellow member of the British Royal Geographical Society and its American counterpart, the American Geographical Society. He was a member of the International Institute of African Languages and Cultures. He belonged to the Catholic Anthropological Conference and was on the faculty of the noted Jesuit Institution of Higher Learning, Boston College. And last but not least, he was a linguist and author of several books, papers, and articles on the subjects of Black civilization and culture in Africa and the West Indies. So Joseph J. Williams was he's heavy. When I read his book, The Hebrewisms of West Africa, and I recommend it too. Um, there's so much information contained in here. This is Joseph J. Williams' book, Hebrewisms. I recommend it too. I recommend this because it condenses information into a more final form that gets to the subject of the matter. But anyway, so yes, it's heavy. So much information. It's unbelievable, which is why so many people still reference. And he was a black. I'm sorry, he was a black American as well. Now, and not the least, he was a linguist and the author of several books, papers, and articles on the subjects of black civilization and culture in Africa and the West Indies. Okay, page 10. The scholarship of Professor Williams, as well as many other scholars and eyewitnesses, is collected, digested, and updated. Is supplemented in this new volume called The Hebrew Heritage of Black Africa. Now, the purpose of writing this book is to bring its readers and to the public at large, whether layperson or scholar, an insight into and perspective of Black heritage with which they previously may have been unaware. So he's writing about Black heritage. The purpose of this book is writing about Black heritage, which many people have been unaware of. The truth is that this book is meant to provide more than cold, hard facts or historical insights, as important as each is. Now, the book has spiritual dimension as well. It is the hope of your author that reading it will stimulate pride and sense of destiny on the part of Black and brown people everywhere. And so think about it. If you don't know who you are, how can you have pride in who you are? If you don't know who you are, how and how you connect to the Bible, especially us as Israelites, how can you be fulfilled in knowing who you are and knowing what to expect or anything? You're lost. So now uh black let me go on. It says in this age when black person is striving as never before in modern history to learn more about himself and his origins, this book is intended as a source for such information to Black Jews and white Jews alike. It should provide further evidence of the universality of their faith and culture for which it serves as a cornerstone. Now, and to everyone, regardless of color or belief, this book should reveal that Black culture, far from being lost in the backwaters of the African jungle, was and continues to be very much in the mainstream of history. Additionally, this book is written at a time when Black peoples the world over are seeking to rediscover their own identities, not satisfied to learn only about white European history and its heroes. Black people in their intellectual and spiritual reawakening want and in fact deserve to know who they are. Only in this way can they decide for themselves in freedom who they are and want to be. Um, Now, page 11, last paragraph. What, for example, is generally thought to be distinctively Jewish by persons of European ancestry is far different from what is considered Jewish by people of Asian or African descent. Bagels and lox, donut shaped rolls and salmon, are considered native to most European Jews. In fact, these foods are Slavic and not Hebrew in origin. In fact, the common language of Central and East European Jews, called Yiddish, really is 11th century German with an admixture of Slavic and Hebrew words and expressions. So the Yiddish is not Hebrew, pure Hebrew. The language of Israel or the Jews European Jews, Yiddish is 11th century German with an admixture of Slavic and Hebrew. So that goes to support what people have said is that the Ashkenazi Jews are really of German, Slavic uh, ancestry. And you go back and actually you can trace them to the Caucasus Mountains, the Khazars, Eurasian peoples, but they're not the ancient Hebrews. Okay, the word synagogue, which has become associated with the Jewish house of prayer, actually is a Greek word. Even the word Jew came into popular usage after the words Hebrew and Israelite, the former Jew, originally applying only to those who were of the tribe of Judah, which at one time was only part of the larger Israelite nation. In fact, it is for this last mentioned reason that most black Jews prefer to refer to themselves as Israelites or Hebrew Israelites to distinguish themselves from their white Jewish counterparts. In the same way that European Jewish customs and practices still contain much that is not pure in origin, the same can be said about the Hebraic civilization of Black Africa. The fact is that the Hebrew influences in both Europe and Africa, as well as in Asia, have been diluted with the passage of time. Our purpose, however, is not to stress the differences which have arisen from the processes of history, but rather it is to find those elements which bind people together. Now, what then can be offered as evidence of a Hebraic background among the peoples of and from Black Africa, particularly that part of the continent? West Africa, from whence most of the world slaves came? The answer is given to us by Professor Williams and the others who speak to us through the pages of this book. Their research findings and their eyewitness experiences prove once and for all that Judaism, or the way of life that has come to be so called by some the culture and religion of the Hebrews, is rooted deeply in the native soil of Black Africa. What we will discover is not merely that the history of Black Africa is tied to that of the Middle East, but also that the Black people in Hebrew civilization were synonymous from the time of the Hebrew patriarch onwards in Africa and in the Middle East itself. So our people are not from Africa. Our people migrated to Africa. Father Abraham was from the Middle East. So that's where our bloodline comes from originally. We're Middle Eastern. That's where E1B1A, our bloodline, takes us back to our DNA. So, um, now, although Professor Williams deals with the evidence of Hebrew culture in Africa and the Caribbean, he nonetheless alludes to the existence of Black Jews in the Middle East when he quotes Sir Harry Johnson, the leading British authority on Black anthropology in the 19th century, that Negroid people with kinky hair inhabited the Babylonian homeland of the patriarch Abraham. So when Abraham was in the Middle East, in that area, there were Black people with kinky hair there. Uh, for those who are not familiar, ancient Babylonia today is called Iraq, very much a Middle Eastern nation. William says in this conclusion makes it easier to show the same Hebrew stock in the evolving of certain tribes in Africa. Now, once we establish the existence and the importance of Hebrew civilization and culture there, we move to other parts of Black Africa and then to the Middle East. And then finally, we switch our attention to America and the modern times. So, thank you for listening. Peace and blessings to you.